Welcome to my very first podcast episode. What? Wow. I just want to say this has been my manifestation process for the last couple of years, and to be able to actually say I'm recording a podcast sounds very wow, it just feels very aligned, and I'm so happy that I'm starting this journey. And thank you guys for tuning in on my episode 1. And I was thinking, what should be my very first episode? And because I know I want to talk about identity in this podcast, along many other things, I want to start first with sharing my own identity and sharing a little bit more about my story and how I got to where I am today. And big part of that comes back to my childhood. So I actually posted my story on a thread, and like the Threads app, and I've gotten so many beautiful feedback when I shared this post, which I'm going to read it out to y'all so you could know what I'm talking about. But when I posted this post back in, when was it? April of last year, 2025. I was so mind blown about how your personal story is so powerful. And I've also discovered my new favorite quote last year: personal is the universal. I think the more and more people share their story, their authenticity, we get to connect, we get to feel seen. And at the end of the day, that's all we want. Like, that's all we want. We want to be seen, we want to feel seen and feel like people understand us, gets us, right? So, with that being said, I would love to read my thread post that I mentioned. So, let me put it up over here. Threads and its algorithm is so amazing. Like, you could yap for like 20 times a day, 100 times a day, and you'll go viral. People will respond. Like, there's no limit to this. So, I'm like, whoa, as a yapper, hence why I'm starting a podcast, this is a great platform. So, anyway, I would love to read this post that I posted in back in April 2025, and now it has 108K views. Wow, I love that for me. So I said, I'm 27 years old. I was born and raised in Fukuoka, Japan, as the only Blasian, Black and Japanese girl in my city that I knew of. I left Japan when I was 18 to explore my other half of my culture and for college. It was uncomfortable being the different one all the time. I realized 9 years later today that the main reason why I left was because I wanted to escape. I wanted to escape being the only girl with dark skin. I wanted to escape never being able to be the kawaii, cute girl. I wanted to escape assumptions people have of me just by looking different. When I went back home this year, for the first time in 9 years, I was homesick. I visited back home often since I left, but this time it hit different. I realized it was because I was comfortable in my own skin now more than ever, for the very first time. Because I had my self-discovery, self-acceptance, and self-love journey in the last 5 years. I didn't care if people stared at me or spoke to me in English, assuming I can't speak Japanese. I didn't mind being the different one. And it feels so good. Japan felt like home. My city felt like home. I felt accepted because I accepted myself. I'm glad I left Japan when I was 18 because I don't think the healing I did could have happened if I was there, or would I have taken a longer time. Now it's funny how I'm trying to find ways where I can go back home more often, wanting to escape to coming back home to my city and my soul. So that was the post I made again back in April 2025. And girl, I'm not even gonna lie, I was making that post while I was like on the toilet, okay? I just want to elaborate on that post because it meant so much to me, and a lot of people who aren't Blasians and who are parents of a Blasian daughter or son just also reached out to me saying like, wow, like this makes me feel hopeful that my kids will become confident as much as you have. I hope my kids could learn to appreciate their features. To someone who is Black and white, saying like, I grew up in, for 18 years, I was surrounded by my Black family, and then I shifted that into being surrounded by my white family and the difference. And it's just people sharing their experiences, even though they may not be Blasian, or they may not be born and raised in Japan and moved out to the United States. They just really resonated with the things I shared. And I want to again elaborate on some of the things I posted on threads. Going back to my childhood, I was born and raised in Fukuoka, Japan, and Fukuoka, Japan is beautiful. We got the best food, you know what I'm saying? But it isn't the biggest city compared to, let's say, like Tokyo. And Fukuoka, Japan, I love it. I will always vouch and love my city, but as the only Blasian girl that I knew of in my city, it was very difficult because there was no one around me that looked like me. And from a very young age, before I was even probably conscious, I was just a very insecure girl because I knew, and it was so clear that I was different. I was speaking English before I spoke Japanese because my dad was taking care of me during the day. And he's from the United States. He's from America. He's from Oakland, actually. So, and my dad will speak to me in English. So my English actually got better before I got better in Japanese. So when I went to kindergarten, I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know Japanese. But you know, kids, we absorb so fast. So I was like being able to like blend in and catch up with the kids within like weeks to come. Which I don't fully remember, but even in kindergarten, I just remember feeling very insecure. Like, there was one time where we had to draw or like paint with our, not paint, draw our parents, our dads, and we had to use a crayon. And for me, my dad's skin is black, so I just picked, you know, a brown crayon, started drawing my dad, and the kid next to me is like, that's not, that's not a skin color. But I'm like, well, that's my daddy's skin color. Anyway, so, you know, that was actually one of the first moments when I was like standing up for what I knew was right from wrong. And I know for a fact that my dad's skin is not hadairo. Hadairo was like this, like a pale beige color that is literally named skin color in Japan back in the day. Not anymore, thank God. It was very clear that I was different. And as a little kid, seeing all the things that are represented in the beauty industry and culture where silky long black hair is beautiful, having very light white skin is beautiful. I never fit into the beauty standards of Japan. And that was my entire not adulthood, my entire childhood until my teenage years. So for 18 years, that's when I left Japan. But for the 18 years that I was in Fukuoka, Japan, I was just always constantly comparing myself to others. And even sharing this story, it just feels so like I still feel her pain. Even though I healed, I worked through my identity and I worked through my insecurities and my, you know, I do what I do. I'm a personal stylist and I teach women how to become confident, right? And comfortable in their own skin. But when I still speak about this version of myself, I still feel her pain because it was very difficult to navigate because I didn't have any tools. I didn't have the understanding on like self-love. Like that concept was not taught in Japan. Self-love was something that was so unfamiliar to me until I reached my later teens and I was like watching Disney Channel. So I was a huge fan of Selena Gomez. So she will talk about self-love and I'm like, what is this? What is self-love? You could love yourself? Wow. So yeah, it was and when I always talk about my like past how I grew up in Japan, I do highlight a lot of my, you know, insecurities and the challenges, but I honestly would not take that back. Like if I could change anything, I won't because I love so much of my culture, my people, my family, my friends. All my friends are the best. Like I love everything about Japan and Fukuoka, Japan, but as my experience being a black and Japanese girl, only black and Japanese girl that I knew of in my city, it was just very difficult. And now, as 18, when I turned 18, I decided to go to college. And I knew that the reason why I wanted to leave Japan was because I just wanted to fit in. I had never had a place where I felt like I could fit in because I never had that sense of community. And again, in Japan, there's a word called jimoto. Jimoto is kind of just like your local group. So they say jimoto ai, meaning like the locals, like people that you went to middle school, elementary school with, like that's your local group. And then I love that. Like I loved my jimoto, you know, I really loved the people around me. But again, at the end of the day, I was never going to be Japanese enough for Japan. Not for my friends necessarily or my family, but I was just never going to be Japanese enough because everywhere I went, like people will assume I can't speak Japanese, or people will assume XYZ. People will assume that I'm very athletic because I'm black. That's a whole different conversation. Which, by the way, I am not athletic at all. So, yeah, there's just assumptions that comes with having my skin tone, and because of all the experience I've had in Japan from a young age, I want to say by middle school, I knew that I was going to leave Japan, and I don't fully remember saying this, but one of my best friends from middle school, she said, "Yeah, like Brooke, you've been always saying that you want to leave Japan. You've been saying that since we were in middle school." And I was like, "Well, it's going to be like long ahead, right? Like we're still in middle school, we still have high school, then college afterwards." So she was thinking like, "Oh, it'll be like later down the road." But then when college came, like the time to go to college came, she was like, "Oh, it went by so fast." Anyway, she was just saying that how I was already prepared to leave Japan when I was like in middle school, which I don't fully remember, but I knew I just wanted to leave. And in the post, I also mentioned like for the first time in 9 years, I'm admitting that I wanted to escape. And the fact that it took me 9 years to kind of like accept the fact that I wanted to escape also took a very long time, but it wasn't new to me. Like I always knew I wanted to leave Japan because it just felt like nothing I do I will fit in. And fitting in and sense of belonging, sense of community is something I never fully felt growing up. So even when I would come visit my family in Oakland, aka my grandma, my dad's mom, and I will just be in California. I will see people who looked so different, and even though it's not my home, it felt like home, and it was a very weird feeling because I want Fukuoka to be my home. I want Japan to be my home, but whenever I visited California, I just felt less alone. I just felt like I could kind of blend in a way, right? Like having my skin tone, it wasn't rare. People are lighter, people are darker, and there's just so much diversity that I really loved. So, yeah, at 18, I did leave. I went to Cal State East Bay, that's in Hayward, California, in the Bay Area. And that was my first city that I lived in because I was dorming. And I thought leaving would solve all my problems. I thought leaving will make me more confident. I thought leaving will make me feel less alone and more like I will have a sense of community and sense of belonging. I thought all the problems that I experienced in Japan would disappear as soon as I left, right? Like that was my thought process. I'm 18. So when that happened, I actually surprisingly did experience some of those things. For my 18 years of me being in Japan, a lot of guys did not find me attractive. And sure, it could be a personality thing, but I got a good personality. So I don't think it was personality, but it's just like the beauty standards, right? I think it was very difficult also to feel like I was not desirable from the guys that I had crushes on. And so I never really had a lot of relationships. So yeah, even that, like when I going from people not finding me attractive with my features to coming to California. And the first year and a half ish of my college year, there were like guys hitting me up, like wanting to take me on dates, and I'm like, wow, I'm like, okay, like I never had that before, right? So obviously, not to say like male validation is everything, it is not, but it was just very new to me, like to feel like I was desired by someone. And I'm like, wow, this is a weird feeling, which I loved. I ate that shit up, like I loved it. But then again, when it comes to the core sense of belonging, sense of identity, feeling like I'm not enough, like it is deep in my wound, right? Like it's something I haven't fully explored and expressed. So even though on the surface level, yeah, I had people, liking me, I had crushes who were crushing on me, I was like, okay, cool, to feeling more confident because it's kind of like when you just not only leaving a country, but when you start in a new city, it's like you're going from zero. Like no one knows your past, no one knows how you grew up. Like you could literally be and create a whole different identity for yourself. So that was also a fun experience. But the core rooted belief of I'm not enough and I don't fit in was still there. So even within my friendships that I had in college, I just felt like I was never quite enough because, again, I'm still the foreigner girl, right? Even though maybe they don't see it like that, I just know there's a lot of cultural differences. The values are different, and it was just hard for me to fit in again in that environment as well. So that was in college, and even though I wanted to solve all my insecurities of 18 years, it didn't fully get solved, or it didn't fully get dissolved. And yeah, in college, I mean, college was an interesting time. It's a beautiful memory, but it's also one of my hardest times that I also experienced. My mental health wasn't the best towards the end. I've had incidents where really had me questioning who am I. And towards the end of my college, that's when I actually started to have my spiritual awakening. So this is a whole podcast episode on its own, my spiritual awakening, because I love hearing people's spiritual awakening because it's so different, but like we have so much in common. Yeah, that's when it happened, like going towards 2020. So the year of pandemic, that's when I graduated. I'm gonna be, yes, pity about it. But year 2020, I graduated, and during that time, I was going through my spiritual awakening. I was like understanding how to live consciously, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a whole different thing that I've never explored before." And during that time, I really started my healing journey. For us first actually introduced by a tarot card reading and then astrology. And then from there, I started looking into manifestation. I'm like, what? You can manifest your dream life? What does that mean? And when that happened, 2021, I started really diving into it. So I started doing like shadow work. I started journaling. I started meditating. I started to release a lot of the things that were not serving me, the identity that were not serving me. So then after a while, I realized that there's a core belief within me, which I didn't realize until this point, that I'm not enough. And again, going back to my childhood, like where it all started was my childhood, which is answer to a lot of your questions, right? In life, go back to your childhood, it will reveal your why. And once I started to really self accept myself for who I am, really understanding who I am, not just on like a physical level, on a 3D level, but on a 5D level, like who am I internally? Like what's my soul? What's my soul's purpose, right? When I really got to understand beyond race and ethnicities and background and of who I am, I was able to self accept a little bit more easier. And that journey has been beautiful, and I think it's a forever journey. I know it's a forever journey because there's a lot of things I still need to accept and discover parts of who I am, because that's what we're here for, right? In our human experience. But when I started that journey more concrete in 2021 until 2020 to 2021, and now going into 2026. So it's been like 4 to 5 years now, or even 6 years of me really being conscious around how I speak, how I attract, how I show up, how I identify myself as who I am. And once I started to accept myself more and more and more, every time I went back home to Japan, it started to feel like home. So it's also interesting if you know astrocartography. I'm not too familiar with everything with when it comes to astrology, but astrocartography shows like the where you're located, or like there's certain parts in the planet on Earth that has certain lines. So there's like a Saturn line, there's a Venus line, or there's a whatever line. Again, not a good person to take astrology advice from, but look it up, astrocartography, it's amazing. So my literally Japan, boom, right there, I have a Saturn line in Japan. So Saturn represents, challenges and things that needs to come to the surface for you to grow, and it's directly in there. So I was living in my Saturn line for that 18 years when I was in Japan. So every time I go back home, and maybe it is because I'm going back home where I grew up, and there's a lot of things that get revealed naturally. But also on top of that, I have a Saturn line in Japan. So every time I go back home, there's always new, how do you say? There's always new realizations that comes up for to the surface. So when I made this post, now going back to the post I was talking about on Threads, when I made this post, when did I go back home? Oh, I went back home that January of 2025. And for the first time, I really felt like home. I really felt safe in my home, not in terms of like physical safety, right? Because Japan is pretty safe, but I just felt safe within my own body. I was more sure of who I am. And because I was sure of who I am, when I went to places where I felt like I didn't belong, I didn't need to necessarily belong in like a traditional way where, you know, I had to look the same or talk the same or have the same skin tone, but I was belonging within myself. I had created a sense of belonging within me. And because of that, wherever I went now, I still feel secure in who I am. And that's how it shifted for me. And that's when I realized, oh, all this time I thought I needed to belong and fit in by molding myself. It's really about accepting who you are. It's not about molding who you are. It's really about rediscovering who you are, accepting who you are. And the more and more you get to do that, every time you go back home or you're in situations you feel like you don't fit in, that pressure gets taken out. That pressure fades away because you're now finding a sense of belonging within you. And I think that was so powerful for me to experience again in January. And there's multiple reasons why I felt that way. I had 2 weddings of 2 of my best friends in Japan that I attended, and I saw a lot of people from middle school and like high school. And a lot of those times I just felt like I wasn't, you know, Japanese enough, or like people secretly didn't like me. Like those are things that I will think, like insecurities and thoughts, like my ego was loud. But this time I just felt very loved. And I think it's also because obviously we're all adults. We're celebrating love at attending 2 weddings. But I think that there's a big part of me loving myself, me choosing to accept myself, that made me shift my whole perspective. So now going back home really excites me. Like I've always been excited. Like to be clear, when I left Japan and in 2016, I went back home, I don't know how many times, but at least once a year-ish. And last year was 2 times for the first time, and that was so fun. But yeah, I've been going back home almost every year. When COVID happened, I had to take a pause for like 2 years or 2.5 years. That was so long. It's not that it's the first time that I went back home for the first time in 9 years. It's that first time in 9 years, I felt like I was actually going back home to self. And this is the work that I want to also talk about throughout my podcast episodes, that you coming back home to yourself will shift everything. When you come back home to yourself, meaning when you rediscover who you are, when you really connect to your purpose, who you are, your identity, everything shifts, because that's when your perception to reality shifts. That's when your confidence shifts. That's how you viewing the world will also shift. And it's just been so beautiful. And obviously in my Threads post, it wasn't this long. I wasn't this elaborated. I wasn't elaborating this much on my post, but yeah, I mean, people still got it, right? People know what it's like to really accept yourself and then seeing other things so differently. Just to wrap up everything, at the end of the day, you don't have to find a place or community where you feel like you have to mold yourself to belong, because you being yourself, you being and showing up as your most authentic self will always be enough. And that's something, the journey that I've been on for I don't know how many years I said, like 5 years. And this is probably one of the most rewarding feeling ever, to really understand that you don't need more validation from men or for women or from friends or family. Like you don't need all these extra shit that's around you, but you get to really tap into who you are, and that gets to be as easy as reflecting inward and really having a relationship with yourself. And when you get to do that, when you reach that point, when you really self-accept, everything shifts. So if this episode resonated with you, please let me know. DM me on Instagram, tag me, post it on your stories. I'm just so excited and so honored that I got to share this story. And I want to hear your story. I want to hear your experience with like belonging, sense of belonging, identity, how that really tied into your own healing journey. And if you really enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to, is it subscribe or follow? I don't even know for a podcast, but subscribe on YouTube for sure, because I also have a YouTube video. But follow on my podcast, and also follow me on Instagram. I'm at Buruann, BURU.ANN, and I would love to connect with you. And thank you again for listening to my episode 1, but there's going to be more to come. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I hope to connect with you soon.